Hello, today we shall discuss the general prologue to the Canterbury Tales. The prologue begins with a description of Spring in these words: one that April with his show suitor, the draught of March have passed to the rooter, and bathed every wine in such liquor, of which virtue engendered is the flow. Chaucer has described spring, something that infuses life into the dead. During winter, people would prefer to stay indoors due to cold weather. The shortage of fresh food forced them to live on salted beef and dried vegetables. After the long winter, the drought has ended with the sweet showers of April. The April showers made the grass, vegetables, and flowers grow again. It was a suitable month to go on pilgrimage, as the month provided them both material and spiritual comfort. The pilgrims, who were the people from different classes, have gathered to visit St. Thomas Becket. Chaucer's first portrait is the knight. The knight has been portrayed as a noble warrior. He is following the code of chivalry and courtly love. He is gentle in speech and manner, but gallant in battles and tournaments. He had fought many battles in distant lands. His victories against heathen tribes in Prussia and Lithuania have brought glory to him. Then we have his son, the squire, who has joined his father's company for pleasure. He is a young courtly lover, whose chivalric prowess has brought him much honor. He shows keen interest in singing, playing the flute, drawing, writing, and riding. He is a curly-haired young man, and his gown is embroidered like a spring meadow. Then we have yeoman. Yeoman is a free-born servant who accompanies the knight and the squire. He is wearing a green dress, which suggests that he is a gamekeeper by profession. He is carrying a long bow, arrows, sword, and shield. His weapons suggest that he may have been among the yeoman archers who routed French chivalry at Crécy. Then we have the prioress, who is named as Madame Eglantine. She is a well-bred woman from upper class who speaks French with English accent. She keeps pet dogs and feeds them roasted meat, milk, and West bread, the food that was not available to most of the people in England. She is of mild disposition and is compassionate towards animals. She is wearing a set of prayer beads on which hangs a brooch. Then we have the monk. Chaucer describes monk wealthy and luxurious, who takes pleasure in hunting. Usually monks were supposed to follow the principles of obedience, poverty, and celibacy. Their activities included praying and glorifying God, giving alms to the poor, and copying manuscripts. But Chaucer's monk dismisses the Augustinian idea of asceticism, renunciation of the world, and cloistered learning. The life of monk suggests an ideological change. Next we have the friars, who were the members of religious order. They were bound to take the vow of living a life of poverty. Their duty was to preach the teachings of Christ. They reached out to the mass, teaching the Bible, begging for money, and enriched their wealth. Chaucer's friar, Herbert, is an example of the corruption of church, which were attacked by Wycliffe and his followers. The business of begging took them to rich houses, and they avoided the poor and the sick. Next is the merchant. The merchant represents a very rich, powerful class in England. In Chaucer's England, there were two types of merchants: the merchant adventurers and the merchants of the staple. The merchant adventurers were those who exported English clothes into foreign cities, and the merchants of the staple were those who exported English wool abroad. Though the merchant is in debt, he talks about profits and bargains. He has put on expensive clothes, and his beaver hat links him to the Flemish trade. The merchant of Chaucer is involved in two major economic crises, usury and illegal dealing in foreign exchange. Next, we have clerk. Chaucer's clerk is a university student preparing for a career in the church. His emaciated horse and threadbare clothes depict him a poor student. But he is happy to have 20 volumes of Aristotle. The 20 books would have been equivalent to the cost of 2 or 3 burghers' houses, since they were produced entirely by hand. He has spent all his money on books. Chaucer's clerk is a portrait of a scholar whose unworldliness kept him poor. Then we have the sergeant of the law. The man of law is wise and clever for preparing flawless legal documents, though the man of law remains busy in his work, but he pretends even more busier than he actually is. He is buying a lot of land, aiming to become a landlord gentleman. Then we have the franklin. The franklin is a free landholder whose exact social position is a matter of dispute. Some put him below the gentry and some put him next to the ranks of knights, squires, and sergeants of the law. He has held important offices. His food and wine are of excellent quality, and has kept fat partridges in coops and fish in private ponds. He is changing his diet according to the season of the year. He is known for his prodigious hospitality. Then we have guildsmen. The 5 guildsmen are all artisans and belong to different crafts. All are smartly dressed in their livery or uniforms. Their behavior and manner make them veritable burgesses and aldermen. They own property and their wives are ambitious. Their presence suggests an emerging class identity. They are the merchant princes of future. Among them is the cook who is accused of selling the stale and unhygienic food. The shipman among them is dressed like the yeoman who steals wine from the merchant. Then we have Doctor of Physic. Doctor of Physic is an epitome of a medieval doctor. In his portrait, philosophy and science are fused. His practice of medicine and surgery bases on the knowledge of astronomy and the 4 humors. The doctor has amassed great wealth from the Black Death. Chaucer also exposes a corrupt nexus between doctors and druggists. Chaucer makes use of pun when he says that the doctor uses gold in medicine. Next is wife of Bath. She has been described as slightly deaf and seamstress by profession. She is neatly dressed and has put on a broad hat. She has covered her hair by a wimple worn under the hat. She had been 3 times to Jerusalem and had been to Rome and to other shrines in the continent. Being a well-experienced pilgrim, she gives advices to other pilgrims. Next is the parson. Chaucer describes the parson gentle and poor, holy in thought and work, and devoted to his pastoral responsibilities. He actually practices what he teaches, Like the clerk, his wealth is entirely spiritual. He sets a noble example to his flock. He would visit his parish members in all kinds of weather. His duty was to collect the tithes and could impose the penalty of excommunication for the non payment of tithes. But he would not condemn the poor who were not able to pay the tax. Then we have the plowman. The plowman is a perfect example of the parson. He has been portrayed as a tenant or a holder of Lammas lands. Lammas lands means village lands which are given on rent from year to year. He is neither aggressive nor fearful of the upper class. He is true representative of a country life. He works hard and knows well how to thresh, to dig, and to make ditches. He loves God and his neighbors, gives charity, and pays tithes on time. Next is the miller. In the Middle Ages, peasants were obliged to take their grain to the miller of the estate. The rate for grinding was fixed by law. Here the miller's portrait is his massive physical strength. He is stout and strong, who can heave a dough out of its hinges, or can break it with his head. He is very talkative and quarrelsome. He steals his customers' corn and overcharges them for grinding. Then we have the manciple. A manciple was in charge of the purchase and storage of food for a college or an inn for court. Chaucer's manciple is cheat like the miller. Though uneducated, he is smarter enough to deal with the learned lawyers. The lawyers were easily fooled by this illiterate manciple. Next is the reeve. The reeve was the chief manager of an estate. His duty was to inspect everything on the estate regularly. He would buy supplies and impose fines on the workers if necessary. He knew well how to store grains, when to sow, and when to reap. He was expert in keeping accounts. Chaucer describes his reeve dishonest, cunning, and terror to the peasants. He is spindly and angry, and is having short hair. He became rich by meanness, severity, and by manipulation of accounts. Then we have the summoner. The summoner brings persons accused of violating church law to the court. Chaucer's summoner suffers from leprosy. All medicines have been tried, but all in vain. His incurable disease is a picture of his soul. He had learned some Latin phrase which he would repeat after he got drunk. He is a sinister as he had manipulated the private lives of people around him. For a quart of wine, he would allow a person to keep a mistress for a year. Then the last one is the pardoner. Pardoners were the sellers of papal indulgences. Indulgence means a way to reduce the amount of punishment. Many pardoners were unholy and unauthorized and were denounced by the church. Chaucer describes his pardoner as the companion of the summoner. He has long flowing yellow hair and is without beard. Chaucer compares his voice with the voice of a goat. He is a good storyteller and cheats the people by narrating stories to them. He is despised by the church for fake pardons and for pocketing their money.